So, the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack has been out for nearly 4 months now, and it's been just as long since I've discussed any updates on the state of the NSO platform as Nintendo continues to move forward with their new strategy for legacy content. Currently, a lot of attention has focused on the constant issues with the emulation of the limited N64 games on the service, most notably a basic coding error that proves fatal to US Paper Mario save files under a specific scenario, as well as the numerous flaws of texture and shading within larger games like Ocarina of Time and Mario 64. However, I want to hone in on what could be in store for the remainder of 2022. With Nintendo 64 games finally here, and with a short list of confirmed games to come slowly but surely, I believe there is still more that can be done and more games that should appear on NSO before the year ends. Let's talk about it. As we storm deeper into year 3 of NSO, settling into life after the expansion pack has been interesting, to say the least. After I had so much anticipation for 64-bit titles to come to NSO, we are ultimately being drip-fed N64 games running on less than ideal emulation. As for the remainder of the consoles on the platform, the NES and SNES libraries have been completely dormant for months now, and in the last few updates for those systems, the games added have been laughable. For the Genesis, it's been fine for now, but I expect the rollout of those games to eventually come to a dreadful crawl as well. This is a massive, disheartening issue with Nintendo Switch Online, and it isn't even the most alarming problem with the service. Nonetheless, if Nintendo is truly doubling down on the extinction of the Virtual Console format and betting on the subscription service plan for access to legacy content for the foreseeable future, then the service actually has to be a platform that is active, aware, and catering to its subscribers. I've talked about it on this channel previously, but although it might not have been sustainable as the market evolved, the Virtual Console line was a great way for everyone to get exactly what they wanted from a pretty expansive selection of legacy content. Every game was individually priced, and you simply didn't have to pay for a game you didn't want. Its only negative was that the cost would add up significantly if you heavily invested in playing the Virtual Console backlog. Even still, it's kept a long shelf life due to having the ability to pique consumers' interest. Nintendo Switch Online is currently doing the opposite of that, withholding from comparing it to Xbox Game Pass because I haven't personally experienced that service. Let's look at PS Now. PS Now has been active for 8 entire years now and is reportedly on the verge of revamping to compete in this current arms race between Sony and Microsoft. Even in the twilight of PS Now's run, the service is still adding more titles consistently to a scaled library of PS2, PS3, and PS4 games. And that's separate from the 2 or 3 games that are more on the newer side that is offered with PS Plus. An argument in defense of NSO would be to point out that there are dozens of shovelware games on PS Now that nobody wants to play as well. And while that is true, these are all generally newer games. A lot of the featured games added every month are as little as barely a year old, while all the games on the NES and SNES libraries are all on the other side of 25. Again, not even addressing or comparing the price factor of it all, Nintendo just needs to take Switch Online seriously and begin consistently adding games to their services. I believe some restructuring will have to take place before the service can reach its peak potential. And that'll likely be something we see when the company is ready to eventually move on from the Switch in the near future. For 2022, the focus can possibly be on the next console catalog that will be added in the fall, with the best chance going to Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games. Truthfully speaking, I wanted to see GameCube titles available, but with how long it took for N64 to arrive, with how slow N64 titles are taking to be added, and with how terrible the emulation has been for the few games that we got for it so far, I think it's best for Nintendo to divert into a couple more unexpected consoles for content before taking another jump. I discussed back in October how the Genesis making its way to NSO could open the door for a lot more third-party consoles to join Switch Online, specifically the ones that were already on Virtual Console during the Wii Shop Channel era. Although they may be much more niche than the Nintendo systems everyone wants to see, I would be down for the Sega Master System, the Sega Saturn, the Neo Geo, and the TurboGrafx-16 to have some games thrown onto the service. As much as we are paying for NSO post expansion pack, the offerings still feel extremely barren, and any new additions would help immensely. Of course, only if Nintendo doesn't continue to free up games to play at the snail's pace that they are doing now. Continuing on the subject of games, there are still a multitude of critical first-party and third-party titles missing from these rosters. It was nice to see Banjo-Kazooie arrive just recently as the N64 lineup begins to take shape, but myself and others are still waiting on obvious games like Earthbound. Personally, I'd love to see Chrono Trigger or Smash 64, Earthworm Jim, SimCity, Mega Man X. I can go on, and while I think it would be a bit ambitious to expect a majority of those games, I believe that opening up for more third-party access would draw a renewed interest in the legacy content portion of NSO. If anything, I expect Earthbound to be the big addition just because of how overdue it is on the SNES's roster, to put it frankly. Another aspect that I skimmed by earlier was price. Of course, the controversy of the extra charge for the expansion pack was the talk of the town towards the end of last year, and to be honest, I'm sure Nintendo is taking so long to roll out content at a sufficient rate because they are planning the best long-term attack to justify getting the most profit out of subscribers by strategically stringing out access to games and consoles. Regardless, if more systems are added, I doubt Nintendo wouldn't second guess on continuing to hike the price further. The real question is just how far can they push the cost of NSO in its current state before it becomes completely absurd. The only reason the expansion pack can be justified right now is that if you think it's crazy like many people do, you simply don't have to pay for it. That being said, the base service that we have been paying for years now still remains insufficient within itself. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, half a year has passed since any NES and SNES incentives have been fulfilled. Over 190 days, and that's just for the $20. Forget the $50 myself and others are paying for now. Lastly, it's the prospect of Nintendo abandoning Switch Online entirely. If you follow my feelings on the service on the channel for the last year or so, then you know I'd be all for a proper revamp of the service to make it lively, exciting, and most importantly, fully worth the subscription. Now, there haven't been any rumors or real concrete news that would suggest a renovation of NSO, but the Switch has without a doubt entered the second half of its lifespan. Despite the immense success the console has had in general, reviving Nintendo from the egg they laid with the Wii U, the next generation of consoles have been going on for nearly 2 years now, and while Nintendo continues to appeal to their strong points in their family-oriented niche, I can see the industry heating up and entering a new era of market approach. Microsoft and Sony are beginning to have an acquisitions war in attempt to overpower one another based on the strength of the brands and property alone. Now, I don't expect Nintendo to try to do anything similar, and I definitely don't think either Sony or Microsoft will try to acquire Nintendo because that might be something so extreme that some governments would have to get involved to prevent it. I believe Nintendo can keep up here by simply putting in the effort to refresh their offerings, with Switch Online being its biggest beneficiary. If they can go back to the drawing board and introduce a more involved, integrated, and more integral subscription service to pique interest and maximize the value of the purchase, then I believe the future of both Switch Online and Nintendo as a whole will be in much greater positions. That being said, that's just my thoughts on the current state of NSO, just an update. Haven't talked about it on the channel in quite some time, and I want to know what your thoughts are for Nintendo Switch Online this year. What do you want to see? What aren't you satisfied with? What have they done recently that you are satisfied with? And really, where do you see the subscription service format going from here for Nintendo, especially with the way things are going in the gaming industry right now. And that being said, if you made it to this part of the video, I truly appreciate you. If you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. We're almost there to 1K. We're gonna get it. And as always, take care, good game, and thank you for watching. Peace.